The research outpost on Veganine drifted in silence. A gray station, orbiting a pale blue gas giant that never stopped churning below. Commander Elias Var's patrol craft cut through the stillness, its engines leaving faint ripples of light in the thin atmosphere. He had not expected to find anything alive out here. The station was supposed to be abandoned since the Chrono Rift. Accident that erased an entire science crew and left the facility frozen in bureaucratic quarantine for half a century. Yet the sensors pulsed. Human life sign detected. Elias frowned. That can't be right, he muttered, glancing at his co-pilot seat, empty except for a half-finished cup of coffee. The station's power grid registered faint heat signatures. One room only, the central control dome. He keyed the comm. This is Commander Var of the Union Fleet. Identify yourself. No answer. Only static. For reasons even he couldn't name. He docked anyway. The airlock hissed open with a sigh that sounded almost like relief. The interior lights flickered as if startled awake after a long dream. Dust floated in the still air, disturbed by the motion of his boots. Every corridor carried the smell of metal and memory. He passed faded warning signs caution. Temporal core, authorized personnel only. When he reached the control dome, the door stood half open. Beyond it glowed a dim amber light. Inside sat a young woman. She looked up slowly as he entered, her hair falling in soft curls against pale skin that seemed untouched by time. She wore a simple gray dress, nothing like a uniform, and no sign of equipment or oxygen pack. Her bare feet rested on the metal floor as if she didn't feel the cold. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then she spoke in a calm, steady voice. You shouldn't be here yet. The words stopped him mid-step. I beg your pardon? You came too soon. She tilted her head, studying him like someone reading a book already written. I've been waiting for you for 700 years. Elise's first instinct was to think she was a leftover recording a hologram. Maybe. But her breath fogged in the air. Her eyes tracked him perfectly. 700 years, he repeated. That's impossible. She smiled faintly. Most things are, until they happen. He tried to question her, but she only gave short answers. Her name was Lyra. She said she had been stationed here when the Chrono Core first activated. They needed a human anchor, she said, someone to hold the timeline stable while they pushed it. He didn't understand, but her tone carried a quiet certainty. Elias glanced around the control room. The monitors still blinked faintly, lines of old code looping endlessly. One screen displayed a frozen timestamp year. 2147.12.05. That was the date of the rift, by every record. Time in this facility had collapsed inward on itself that day. He walked toward the main console and touched the screen. It flickered to life, showing his reflection beside hers. You've been here all this time? I've been here every time, she said, before he could ask what she meant. The floor trembled slightly, a low vibration like a heartbeat deep in the walls. She turned toward the sound and whispered, It's starting again. Elias looked around, alarmed. What's starting? The loop. She stood and walked to the main airlock at the back of the room. The heavy door was cracked open, its warning lights dead. Through the gap, he could see the stars of Vega's sky glittering beyond the transparent shield. Wait, said, stepping forward. We need to. Lyra raised her hand, gentle but firm. Please don't move. She reached out and pressed the edge of the door. It closed with a slow metallic thud. The sound echoed through the entire station, then everything stopped. The humming generators fell silent. The vibration ceased. Even the dust in the air froze mid-dash float. Elias blinked in confusion. The chronometer on his wrist glowed 1 frozen second, then refused to tick forward. He tapped it, then hit it again, nothing. Through the viewport, the gas giant below had stopped turning. The storm bands, once alive with motion, were still like painted glass. What did you do? He asked quietly. Lyra turned toward him, eyes reflecting the dim emergency lights. I didn't do it. Time listened. Minutes soared, maybe years passed. The stillness felt endless. Elias tried the communicator, the systems, anything that might respond. but every circuit was frozen in the same eternal second. Only Lyra moved freely, watching him with patient calm. "You're outside it," she explained softly. "The rift caught you because you touched the console while it was waking up. Now you're part of the interval." "The interval?" "The space between moments." He tried to steady his breathing. "How do we get out?" "You don't," she said simply. "Not until it's ready." Her tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. It's like a doctor delivering a diagnosis that couldn't be changed. Elias looked around again. The silence was absolute. He couldn't even hear his own heartbeat at times, as if the air absorbed sound. "Why me?" he asked. Lyra hesitated before answering. "Because the universe always needs a witness. I've been alone here too long. It must have decided you were next." Her eyes shimmered with something like sadness. He wanted to argue, to tell her this was madness, but the evidence surrounded him. The stars themselves were unmoving. Time had stopped breathing. Later, if later even meant anything, she told him stories. She spoke of the original scientists who tried to bend time, believing they could slow decay and preserve knowledge forever. They succeeded, she said softly, but not the way they hoped. The cord didn't just slow time, it broke it. I was the anchor. I held the event in 1 second so it wouldn't spread across reality. Elias stared at her. "You've been holding it for 700 years? She nodded. "Every second of it." He noticed her hands trembling slightly. "That must be unbearable. Sometimes." She smiled again, faint and weary. "But I've learned to listen. Time whispers when it's hurt. It asks for quiet. That's why I closed the door." He didn't understand the last part. "Close the door?" "The core responds to cause and choice," she said. "If the airlock remains open, time leaks. Closing it seals the moment. It stops everything, including me." Her words sank into him like cold water. "You mean you freeze yourself?" "I merge with the second," she corrected. "That's how the universe stays alive." Elias tried everything he could think of: manual overrides, emergency power, even smashing a control panel, but the station ignored him. Lyra only watched, patient, like she had seen this happen many times before. Finally, he sat down beside her on the floor. "You said you were waiting for me. Why?" She looked at him, a long gaze that felt older than humanity itself. "Because the next choice isn't mine. It's yours." The air shimmered faintly, as if the frozen dust wanted to move again. He thought he saw color flicker outside the window, maybe stars trying to remember how to shine. "What kind of choice?" he asked. "You'll see," she whispered. "But when the door closes again, remember, don't fight it. If you do, the second will tear apart." Her calm frightened him more than the stillness. He tried to stand, but the gravity felt heavier now, pressing him down. "You're saying this loop keeps happening?" "Yes. I meet you. You ask questions. I close the door. Time rests. Then it begins again. The faces change, but the story stays." He stared at her, realization dawning. "So I'm not the first?" Her eyes softened. "You're the first who listened." They sat in silence for what might have been an eternity. The frozen storm of the gas giant gleamed outside, a swirl of white and sapphire locked in perfect beauty. Elias thought about Earth, about the endless rush of moments everyone took for granted, the ticking clocks, the sunrise, the laughter that only mattered because it ended. Here, in this motionless second, he realized how fragile time really was. Lyra's voice broke the quiet. "Sometimes I wonder if the universe stops because it's lonely." He looked at her, unsure if she was joking. She was. "Do you ever wish it would just keep going?" She smiled sadly. "Every time." He walked to the airlock again. His gloved fingers brushed the cold surface of the door she had closed. It felt warm to the touch, pulsing faintly with light, like a living heart behind steel. "Lyra," he said, "if I open this, what happens?" Her expression turned distant. "Everything moves again, but it always finds its way back here. So this is a trap with no end." "Not a trap," she said quietly. "A promise. The universe promised to keep trying until someone chose differently. He turned toward her, confusion written on his face. Differently how? Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she stood and approached him. The air around her shimmered softly, as if the light bent toward her presence. When the stranger girl closes the door, she said almost to herself, time holds its breath. It waits to see if someone will care enough to stay. She looked into his eyes. Will you? Elias didn't know yet. All he felt was the quiet weight of infinity pressing against his chest and the strange certainty that whatever he chose next would echo across every moment that ever existed. Outside, the frozen stars seemed to lean closer, waiting, and for the first time in 700 years, the girl wasn't alone. The silence inside the station felt endless. Elias could no longer tell if hours or centuries had passed. The clock still showed the same second. The faint hum of life support had faded completely. Even his own breath felt softer, as if sound itself had forgotten how to move. Lyra sat cross-legged near the core chamber door, her eyes half closed. She looked peaceful, almost asleep, but he knew she was awake. Her presence was the only thing that felt real. He wanted to speak but hesitated. There was something sacred about the stillness, something fragile. Finally, he said, "How long does it usually last?" She opened her eyes. "Until the universe remembers how to breathe," Elias frowned. "That's not very helpful." She smiled faintly. "It never is." He began exploring the rest of the station. The corridors curved in strange loops, as if space itself had folded slightly. Each time he walked far enough, he somehow ended up back in the control dome. The walls occasionally shimmered, like reflections in water. Lyra watched him wander without comment. When he returned, she asked quietly, "You've accepted it, haven't you?" "Accepted what?" "That we're not moving forward," sighed. "I don't have to accept it. It's a fact." Her gaze softened. "That's good. Most people panic. They fight it until the moment eats them. The moment eats them." He repeated, disturbed. She nodded. The core can only hold two conscious minds inside the same second. When they try to break it, they dissolve into the field. "That's why I said not to fight it." Elias swallowed hard. He didn't know if she was warning him or comforting him. Later, they talked again. He told her about his life in the Union fleet, about routine patrols across the colonies and how the universe had started to feel smaller each year. "I always thought space meant freedom," he said. "But after a while, it just feels quiet, empty." Lyra listened with gentle attention. "That's how time feels too." He looked at her curiously. "Do you remember everything that happened before the rift?" "Not everything," she said softly. "Time erases what it doesn't need, but it leaves feelings behind. I remember being afraid. Then I remember the core asking for someone to stay, and I said yes." He studied her face, trying to imagine a woman choosing to become part of a machine. "Why you?" "Because I was already tired of running from endings," she said. "They thought I was expendable. I thought I could fix what they broke." "Maybe I did." Elias sat beside her again. "You talk like the universe is alive." "It is," she said without hesitation. "It listens. It forgives. But it never forgets." Dazor, what he assumed were days passed. The frozen storm outside never moved. Elias began to notice strange flickers in the corner of his vision, flashes of other rooms. Other faces, other versions of himself. In one, he saw his reflection wearing a different uniform. In another, Lyra looked older, her hair silver, her eyes tired. He blinked, and it was gone. He turned to her. "What are those?" "Fragments," she said. "Each loop leaves echoes. The longer you stay, the more you see." He shivered. "So I'm seeing other timelines?" "Yes. Possibilities. Memories of what might have happened if someone chose differently. Can they hurt us?" "No," she said. Then after a pause, "Unless you start believing one of them is real." Her answer didn't calm him. But he trusted her, taught the quiet patience of someone who had seen countless men lose their minds in this place. One night, though there was no night here, he found her standing by the viewport. Her hair caught the faint glow of the gas giant below. For a moment, she looked more human than ever. I used to count the stars, she said softly. But then I realized they don't move here. So I stopped counting. Elias stepped beside her. What do you do instead? I remember people. He tilted his head. People. Yes, every visitor. Every time the Corps brings someone here, I remember their names, their stories, their last words. You're the 13th. The 13th. She nodded. 12 before you. 12 who tried to open the door before it was time. When they did, the second shattered. Everything reset. I had to start again. He hesitated. You remember all of them? Her voice broke slightly. I try to. But the Corps takes small pieces away each time. I only remember faces now. Yours is the clearest. He didn't know what to say. For the first time, he felt the heavy loneliness behind her calm. After that, Elias began working on the main console again, studying its frozen data. Strangely, the longer he focused, the more it responded. The screens blinked faintly as if recognizing his determination. Lyra approached slowly. It's waking up, she whispered. What happens when it wakes? The rift begins again. He looked at her. You said the universe keeps looping until someone chooses differently. What does that mean? Lyra's eyes flickered with the light of the monitors. It means someone must choose to stay when it restarts, to live between seconds forever so the rest can move again. You mean, like you did? Yes. He stared at the display. His hands trembled slightly. And if no one stays, then the loop collapses. Everything unravels. Elias fell silent for a long moment. He understood now why she kept closing the door, why she stayed when everyone else tried to run. She was the dam holding back eternity. But he couldn't stop thinking of Earth, of people he'd never see again, of sunrises that might already have been erased from history. Lyra, he said softly, what if we could fix the Corps instead of freezing time again? Her eyes widened, almost frightened. No one can fix it. It's older than us now. It's part of the universe's pulse. Maybe, but what if that's the point? Maybe it's not asking for a sacrifice anymore. Maybe it's asking for understanding. Lyra looked at him like she wanted to believe that. You sound like the first scientist who built it. He said the same words. What happened to him? He opened the door. The air shimmered again. The stars flickered. A deep rumble vibrated through the metal floor. The Corps was stirring. Elias felt weight return to his body gravity, shifting. Air humming faintly as if time was trying to restart. It's happening, Lyra said, stepping back. The rift is waking. He moved to the console. What do I do? Stay calm. Don't let the light pull you in. He glanced at her. What happens if it does? You'll dissolve into every version of yourself that ever existed. He almost laughed at the absurdity, but the seriousness in her face silenced him. The walls began to glow. Streams of light rose from the floor like water reversing its flow. Through the viewport, the frozen clouds of the gas giant began to twist again. Slow at first, then faster. Lyra gripped the railing. It's choosing. The Corps is testing you. Testing me? Yes. It always tests the one who arrives. For what? For the truth they're willing to protect? Suddenly, Elias saw visions. Not just flickers, clear images pouring through the light. He saw an entire world spinning backward. Cities collapsing into dust. Stars dying in silence. Then another vision replaced it. People rebuilding, holding hands, smiling. Surviving each future hovered before him like a mirror. Lyra's voice echoed faintly. Every choice makes a timeline. The Corps shows you what you love and what you fear. He turned toward her. And what do you see? Her expression turned unreadable. I see you closing the door beside me. Before he could answer, a sharp tremor ran through the floor. Panels exploded in a cascade of light. The Corps chamber door pulsed, half open. Beyond it, swirling white energy spun like a living storm. Lyra looked at him, calm despite the chaos. This is the moment. The moment for what? To decide what stays. The storm roared now, but there was no sound, just light that pressed against their skin. Time was starting again. Elias could feel seconds trying to move. Pushing through the frozen air like a heartbeat returning, he shouted over the silence, "If I don't close the door, what happens?" Reality unfolds without order. Every version of history fights to exist. It will destroy everything. And if I do close it, then I disappear again, she said simply. He froze. There's no other way? She smiled faintly. There's always another way. But it needs someone brave enough to find it. Elias looked at the core, then at her. The white light bathed her face, making her look almost transparent. He realized that maybe she wasn't fully human anymore. Maybe she was the embodiment of time itself. It's the echo of every sacrifice made before. He reached for her hand. Then let's find it together. Lyra hesitated, then took his hand. Her touch felt warm, real, alive. If we fail, she whispered, the loop will end. Everything will end. Then we don't fail. The core pulsed once, twice, then expanded outward. They stood together in the storm of light. Two figures against the impossible. The air crackled around them. He felt his mind stretching across countless realities, hearing the echoes of other lives, other choices. And in all of them, one truth remained. Every time the girl closed the door, time held its breath. But this time, maybe it wouldn't have to. The light inside the core swelled until the whole station looked like it was made of glass. Elias felt every nerve in his body vibrate. Time itself seemed to pulse like a living thing trying to decide which direction to move. Lyra stood beside him, her hands still locked with his. Her face glowed in the storm's white light. It's waking, she whispered. It knows we're both here. Elias stared at the spinning mass of light beyond the control rail. Then we make it listen. The storm's pull grew stronger, tugging at his skin, stretching his voice into echoes that returned before he spoke. Lyra didn't move. She watched the light with calm acceptance, as if greeting an old friend. It remembers you, she said softly. It should, Elias muttered. You've kept it alive for 700 years. She shook her head slowly. No, I didn't keep it alive. It kept me. Suddenly the room split into fragments of color walls fading in and out, floor shifting like liquid glass. Elias saw countless reflections of himself in Lyra. In some, she was older. In others, he was gone. Every version was trapped in a different instant, repeating the same motion over and over. He looked around in panic. What is this? The possibilities, Lyra said. The core is showing us every version of now. We're standing at the center of all time. He turned toward her reflection nearest the door. In that version, she wasn't touching him. She was alone, closing the door again. The light froze, and she vanished. Elias clenched his fists. No, not again. Lyra followed his gaze. Her expression softened. That's how it always ends. I close the door, time breathes again, and I disappear. Not this time, he said. She looked at him with quiet sadness. You can't change what must happen. Maybe not what must happen, he said, but maybe how it happens. He stepped toward the core, feeling the light press against his skin like wind. The station trembled. Sparks of frozen time floated through the air like glowing dust. Lyra's voice echoed behind him. Elias, stop. It'll pull you in. He turned slightly. What if that's what it needs? She shook her head, frightened now. No human has ever survived direct contact with it, and maybe it's time one did. He reached toward the core. The instant his hand brushed the edge of the light, a flood of images slammed into his mind, every timeline. Every loop, every moment Lyra had lived through. He saw the first scientists, the accident, the screaming faces frozen in mid-terror. He saw Lyra volunteering to anchor the timeline, her hand on the console, her eyes calm as everything collapsed around her. Then he saw her repeating the act again and again, closing the same door, erasing herself to keep others safe. The weight of centuries crashed over him. He pulled his hand back, gasping. You've been doing this alone for so long. She didn't answer. Her eyes glistened. It's all I know. The core pulsed again, brighter now, almost too bright to look at. Elias forced himself to stand. You said someone has to stay so the rest can move? Yes. What if two stayed? She blinked, too. If you and I hold it together, maybe the balance shifts. You don't vanish. I don't dissolve. Maybe time learns to keep us both. Lyra looked at him in disbelief. No one ever tried that. It could destroy the anchor field, or it could fix it. The storm's pull increased. The floor cracked. Outside the viewport, the gas giant's clouds began to swirl backward again. Elias reached out his hand. Trust me, Lyra hesitated. For one breath, then placed her hand in his. The core reacted instantly. The light coiled around them both, wrapping them in spirals of white and blue energy. Elias felt his heart slow, his thoughts stretching into endless moments. He could see his own atoms vibrating between seconds. Lyra's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Don't let go. I won't. The world vanished. They were standing in a void-endless space, without stars. A faint hum surrounded them, like the sound of wind trapped in memory. Elias turned slowly. Lyra stood nearby, glowing faintly. Where are we? He asked. Inside the moment, she said. The true center of the rift. It's empty. It's waiting, she said. It always waits for the choice. What choice? She turned toward him. Every loop ends here. The core asks the same question. Which reality deserves to continue? Until someone answers, time can't move. He stared at her. You mean you decide what future exists? She nodded. But I always choose the same one. I let the universe go on without me. Elias took a slow breath. Then let's choose one where you stay. Lyra shook her head. If I stay, the loop collapses. Then maybe it's time it collapses, he said firmly. The universe can't keep asking you to sacrifice yourself. She looked down. And if it falls apart, then we fall with it, he said. But at least it'll be real. For a moment she was silent. Then she smiled, the first true warm smile he'd seen on her face. You really believe we can fix time by defying it? I believe the universe listens, he said softly, echoing her old words. And maybe it's waited 700 years for someone to tell it no. The void pulsed once, as if it heard them. Lyra reached up and touched the side of his face. Then say it with me. Together they spoke. No more loops. The core roared. Light burst around them like a sunrise made of sound. The emptiness shattered into thousands of colors, each one a possible reality trying to form. Elias held on to Lyra as the storm consumed them. He saw flashes of future Earth some at peace, some burning, some rebuilding among the stars. He saw children born under alien suns. He saw Lyra teaching others about time, her laughter echoing through new worlds, and then he saw nothing at all. The light faded. Elias opened his eyes. Slowly he was lying on a metallic floor. The station was silent again, but not frozen. The soft hum of machinery filled the air. He turned his head. The chronometer on his wrist ticked, normally seconds moving forward. He sat up fast. Lyra. No answer. He stood and looked around. The core chamber was quiet, calm. The storm had vanished. The air smelled clean, new. His chest tightened. Lyra. Then he heard footsteps behind him. She stepped out from the shadow of the corridor. Her hair was different, shorter, loose. Her face looked rested, alive. For the first time, she wasn't glowing. She was human again. Elias froze. You're here? She smiled gently. Yes, and so are you. Took a shaky breath. Did it work? She nodded. Time's moving. The core stable. The loop is over. He let out a laugh of relief, half disbelieving. We did it. Lyra looked at him with quiet wonder. No, she said softly. You did. You made a different choice. The universe heard you. They spent the next hours exploring the station. The walls no longer shimmered. The airlock opened to reveal the stars moving again, the gas giant swirling below. Everything looked the same, yet new. Elias turned to her. What happens now? She shrugged slightly. We live, I think. Maybe for the first time. He looked out the viewport. Do you remember everything? Not all, she said. Some loops fade away. But I remember you. He smiled faintly. Good, because I don't think I could explain any of this to anyone else. She laughed softly, the sound warm and real. Then don't. Let it be our secret. Later, as the Union rescue team's beacon pinged on his console, Elias watched Lyra staring out at the stars. The light reflected in her eyes like tiny galaxies. You could come with us, he said quietly. She didn't turn. Maybe, but I think I belong here now. Someone should watch over the core. He stepped beside her. You won't be alone. She looked at him, smiling. I know, not anymore. The docking signal chimed. The rescue ship approached, its lights cutting across the dark. Elias turned back once more. Lyra, he said softly. If time ever holds its breath again, she finished his sentence with a smile. Then we'll remind it to exhale. He hesitated, then saluted her with quiet respect before stepping into the airlock as the door began to close. He saw her raise her hand in farewell, standing in the golden light of the core chamber. The metal door sealed with a gentle hiss. For a moment, the hum of the engines filled the silence. Then far behind him, deep inside the station, a faint pulse of light rippled through the core, steady, calm, alive, and across the galaxy. For the first time in 700 years, time did not hold its breath. It moved freely, peaceful, steady, and whole.